What better way to review a marathon running shoe than by taking it on a marathon? And that's exactly what I did with the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4. Hi everybody and welcome to another video. My name is Matt and this is What Matters to Matt, and that is right. On today's video we are taking a closer look at the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4. Now, to get a disclosure out of the way right off the bat, this is a shoe that I purchased with my own money. So clearly nobody is paying me to make this video. My thoughts and my opinions are definitely my own. And if after watching this video, you think you want to pick up the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 or just want to take a closer look, I will put a link to it in the description down below. I'm also going to put a link to VMZFit.com. Now, that is a website that my family have been building. Needs a few updates, but we're going to make sure that this shoe is on there. Some of those are affiliate links, but when you use one of those, it really doesn't change the purchase for you, but it goes a long way to help this little channel that we are trying to grow. All right. As usual, we are going to go down through the upper, the midsole, and the outsole, and ultimately I am going to let you know whether I think the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is worth your hard-earned cash, or at least relative to other shoes that are out there on the market. So the weight of the Puma is 170 grams or 6 ounces in US men's size 9, which is incredibly light. Stack height in this shoe is 40 millimeters in the heel and 32 millimeters in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. The midsole is the Nitro Foam Elite with a full length carbon fiber power plate, and the outsole is Puma rubber compound, and the upper is Ultra Weave with power tape for lockdown, and the category is a neutral race day shoe. So the question of the day is, what is the super shoe that's on your feet for your races this spring? Now, the upper of the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is all about stripping weight, like a lot of race day shoes are, but it definitely can keep you locked in at just about any pace. You're getting this ultra light engineered mesh that feels almost non-existent on the foot. It really has that disappearing factor, and I love that in a running shoe, but it still somehow manages to hold the structure when you start really pushing the pace, so you get really good lockdown in this shoe. Up front in the toe box, it is minimal, but there's enough room to naturally splay without having a sloppy race feel, which sometimes you don't get in those race day shoes. The material is thin and highly breathable, which really helps out on those hotter runs. And so far, my runs in this shoe have been in colder weather, including the marathon, and my feet were pretty cool, which means I do not think you're going to have any trouble if you're running this in the summer heat, summer weather. Around the heel collar, it actually the biggest concern I have with this shoe. Now, prior to the marathon, I had taken it on a couple of medium long runs. These were workouts and maybe had a little irritation just around here. Not enough for me to take note, but during the marathon, I ended up with some pretty big blisters. I'm gonna spare you seeing the video of those blisters. We're not gonna put those on in here. It was a little bad. And that actually did happen on both of my Achilles, and that was a similar issue that I actually have with the Elite 3. Now, that is going to be a deal breaker for some, but, and this is honestly a bit of a spoiler for me, if I have a shoe that is otherwise comfortable in the upper and works really, really well for me, I'm more than willing to add a couple of Band-Aids or a little bit of tape around that heel. Now, I say this for a race day shoe or a shoe that I'm going to use for big sessions. It wouldn't be something that I put up with for a daily trainer. But both the Elite 3 and the Elite 4, there is not a ton of padding in the back here. So there's just enough to hold the heel in place, but relative to the rest of the upper, there is actually quite a bit of structure back here. And it does kind of tilt back towards the Achilles, which I think might have a lot to do. Don't know if you can quite see that, but it does tilt back towards the Achilles, which I think might have a lot to do with that rubbing that I was getting around the heel. Lockdown is pretty spectacular in this, and the shoe does fit true to size, so you really get that race day locked in feel that you want from your super shoe. Now, the tongue has minimal padding like you would, again, expect from a race shoe, and there is no gusset in here. I'll try to put some B-roll up, but I did not really notice it moving around on me during the race at all. But there is this one little annoyance with this tongue, And it reminds me of the tongue that we have in the Adios Pro 3. That's right. Taking it back a couple of years to one of my favorite shoes of all time. Even though the upper on the Adios Pro 3 was absolute crap. The material on the side of the tongue is so thin that when you're putting your foot into the shoe, you really, it starts to fold over quite a bit, and it wrinkles. So you really got to pay attention when you're lacing this up, and probably take an extra minute to just make sure that's lying flat on your foot. Again, that's another one of those things that if this were a daily trainer, it would almost annoy me enough that it would be a deal breaker. It's not something I want to deal with every day. But if I'm using this for workouts and races, it becomes more of a manageable inconvenience. Now the laces work really well as well. We've got those what's almost traditional now, sawtooth laces that you have in race day shoes, and you've got the extra hole here if you're going to do the runner's knot. So I guess for me, when it comes to the upper, there's a couple of small annoyances that I think could be fixed, but outside of that, it's really good. The lockdown is really comfortable, and it fit my foot really, really well. So would you be surprised if I told you that the midsole of the Elite 4 is where the shoe really comes alive? Of course not. It's a race day shoe, but the midsole is where this shoe really, really comes alive. You're getting Puma's Nitro Elite foam, which is an ultralight nitrogen-infused compound that's designed to give you a really responsive, almost spring-loaded feel underfoot. And it's not soft. It's not like a sink-in marathon cushion that you get from some other shoes. It's more of a sharp, efficient rebound that helps you when you're running at threshold or faster, which I think for some people is going to make this a pretty good weapon for a number of different race distances and workouts. Now, I find that a lot of times the race day shoes that don't sit in that super squishy category actually work better for me for a few different reasons. One being that they honestly just tend to feel a little more stable and predictable out on the run. If I'm falling apart towards the end of the marathon, like I was last weekend in the marathon, they don't become too wild and crazy that I get myself into a lot of trouble. I also find that the Puma works really well at a number of different paces and race distances where I feel happy to take this on a 5K or all the way up to the marathon, which honestly translates into a really good workout shoe for me. I'm noticing more and more that these up-tempo trainers with the accessibility of super shoes now, once I've used them in a few races, I tend to move these to my workouts and spend less time in those up-tempo trainers that traditionally I would have used for workouts. So a little bit of an added bonus here because this feels so good at so many different paces that it works well for interval sessions where I'm slowing down and picking up the pace. That stability in that firmer midsole does really, really well. I do find that there is plenty of protection, and actually the day after the marathon, I honestly didn't really feel all that banged up. And this week, running doesn't live in a vacuum. I went back to teaching grade 1. And one of the things I was really not looking forward to were all the times I had to squat down or sit in one of those little tiny chairs to get on the same level as my grade 1 students, and having to find a way to get back up without them having to pry me off the chair and help get me up. But I felt pretty good, no real issue. I'd like to think some of that was my fitness, but really, a lot of that probably comes down to the shoe. You also have that carbon power plate sandwiched in between there, in between the two layers of foam, and it really does feel pretty stiff. Now, the plate, again, does a lot to put this shoe on the snappy side of things, that when you are running at faster paces and putting a lot of force through your toe off, you can feel the shoe working with you. Sometimes all that translates into in a shoe is that it really does not give you much back at slower paces, but the trade-off is it remains pretty stable and comfortable, so it still works running slow. You're just reminded that it is much happier going faster. By the way, before we get to the outsole, I don't know if you've heard a lot in the background here. Again, don't live in a vacuum. Families out there having quite a bit of fun. So, You might hear them in the background. Apologize for that. We're not going to edit that out just for this. The outsole. Now this is actually an interesting one for me this time around. The marathon I just ran had some pretty tough conditions when it comes to just how bad the footing got during the back half of the race. And I went into the race knowing that it would be the case, and I have always held Puma grip as the standard to compare all other running shoes to. But I kind of felt like at times when it got really sloppy, the grip struggled a bit. A lot of shoes are every shoe is gonna struggle a bit in that, but it struggled a bit more than I expected it to. Now it's easy to say that it had very little to do with the shoe and everyone was having similar issues on the day. Conditions were really not what you would hope or expect during many road marathons, and I had zero issues on wet pavement. But this is a lighter shoe than the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 that we've got right here. And in fact, I'm sure it is the lightest shoe that I own right now. And one of the ways that Puma got there was with the outsole rubber. If you actually take a closer look at the 3, we have a good amount of rubber. I don't know if that's gonna focus on there or not, but we do have a good amount of rubber relative to a super shoe, both in the forefoot and back here in the heel. But in the 4, you've got a lot less rubber, and maybe some B-roll will work better here. And in fact, you actually have no rubber at all back here on the medial side of the heel. And this pattern up front, and I'll definitely use B-roll for this, but this pattern up front actually kind of gives you the impression that it's worn away a little bit when really it has far fewer miles than the 3, which makes a big difference on any other surface than straight pavement. And I really did notice that. Now, not just in crazy muddy conditions, but whenever I got on crushed rock or packed dirt, it just does not quite have the same grip as the 3. Now, to Puma's credit, I was pretty concerned with them having no rubber back here on that medial side, but so far the wear hasn't been any worse than that than any other part of the shoe. Actually, the medial side probably is a little bit more worn than the lateral side, but again, this is, if I'm going to land on my heel, it's going to be back here more on the lateral side. I don't really land here too much. That's probably a big reason why this hasn't worn out, but I'm surprised to see that this hasn't chunked up at all, given just the conditions and the surfaces that I ran that marathon in. For that marathon, on that day, I may have picked the 3 over the 4 simply to get me through the 8-kilometer stretch a little less frustrated. Now, when it comes to durability, this is a race day shoe, but I think if you really wanted to, you could have a ton of fun miles from it. My experience is a shoe with that ATPU midsole that we have here really tends to hold up well and takes a longer time than you would traditionally expect for it to lose its pop. The upper, although it is really stripped back, I really don't see anything in here that's going to indicate that that's going to wear anytime quickly. And the same kind of goes for that outsole. Even though I don't like that it's smoothed out up here in the toe, and I do have a little tiny bit of wear back here, and the rubber isn't nearly as thick as what we had on the 3, I do think that it's going to last quite a long time in this shoe. Of course, that's kind of just my guess, and as I get so many more miles in this, I'll come back here and report back on just how well this has held up, because I will be using this for a lot of harder efforts through the summer and probably a couple of shorter races. Honestly, I do think most runners could find a pretty good place for this shoe in their rotation. It's fun, it's light, it's quick, it's decently stable. It will work at a variety of paces and distances. For those looking for that ultimate bouncy, squishy super shoe that allows you the ultimate rhythm to lock into a pace and propel you forward for a big race, you might want to look at something more like the Alpha Fly. But outside of that, this is a really good option. Now the big question is this actually worth money? And yes, I think when you compare this to what else is out there, current super shoes from different brands, and even the Fast R3 within the Puma lineup itself, they've priced this at a good price point. Just like every other company, it's slowly inched up, but I think it's still competitively priced. and well within the realm of being worth its money relative to other super shoes that are out there. They're all expensive, but worth it versus some of the others. And for me, I am really happy with this purchase and would definitely buy this shoe again. Probably not going to because, you know, other shoes we need to try, but if I had the opportunity, I'd buy it again. That is it, guys. That is my review of the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4. If you like this video and found it helpful and you are not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It's free to you and really, really does help me out and helps this little channel, again, that we are trying to grow. If you are a longtime subscriber from the bottom of my midsole, thank you so much for the support. Also, check out the links down in the description below, and I will see you in a couple of days.